Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry Saravia at the movies. So today we're taking a look at The Other Side of the Wind, which was Orson Welles' last film, or at least last completed film. There were a couple of other films that he had been working on prior to his death in 1985, but this is the one that streaming giant Netflix finally picked up the tab and decided to have it completed. This was a film that Orson Welles had made between the years of 1970 and 1976, and had tried vainly for years to get completion funds to basically finish the film. Most of it had been shot, but only roughly 40 minutes of the film had been edited. And financing was, there was all sorts of entanglements that included getting money from the brother of the Shah of Iran. So we're going way back now in terms of history about this, with regards to this film. So, The Other Side of the Wind is not like other films. It's not like anything that Orson Welles has ever made prior to The Other Side of the Wind, although it shares a certain kinship with F for Fake, which Welles did manage to complete back in 1973. And that was a film about the art forgery and art in general and all sorts of things. It's a wonderful film to check out. But in terms of its editing style, very kamikaze type of style that was certainly advanced for films in those days, in the 1970s, that is having an entire film cut in such a way, which anticipated, I think, Oliver Stone's style of editing with Natural Born Killers and other films he had done. Anyway, this is still a very unique kind of film. And let's discuss a little bit about what The Other Side of the Wind is about. So basically, John Huston is in the film. He plays a maverick filmmaker, not unlike Orson Welles, known as the Ernest Hemingway of cinema. And his name is Jake Hannaford. And he has he's also trying to find completion funds to finish a film he has made that features a lot of nudity and sex and violence. And in particular, it has Oya Kodar, who was Orson Welles' girlfriend for many, many years up until his death, playing a woman, a Native American, who walks around the film within the film that Jake Hannaford is making. She walks around naked for most of the film. So the movie mostly is confined to a late-night birthday party for Jake Hannaford, played by John Huston. And he is the safari shirt-wearing film director who is broke, and he hopes his budding friend, a hotshot film director named Brooks Otterlake, played by Peter Bogdanovich, a role that was earlier filmed with Rich Little, that he can get a young studio boss to finish financing his work. So that's essentially that's the story of Orson Welles' life in the last 30, 40 years before his death. And most of this is captured very well, by the way, in Josh Karp's entertaining and distressing book called The Making of the Other Side of the Wind, Orson Welles' last movie. So at the party, we're introduced to all sorts of people. There's a Pauline Kael-type film critic named Juliette Riche, played by Susan Strasberg, an ex-alcoholic stooge of Hannaford's who has some history with him, played by Norman Foster, who directed Orson Welles back in the day in a film called Journey of Fear. And he's always eating gumdrops, this particular guy, who so that he won't drink any alcohol. There's Lily Palmer, a very striking performance, as Sarah Valeska, an actress who had appeared in Hannaford's work and declares she never slept with the legendary man. Edmund O'Brien as another stooge and former actor of Hannaford's, who uses the megaphone to announce screenings of the director's incomplete footage, amongst other things. Joseph McBride, who is now a college film professor. He plays Marvin Pister, the nervously awkward film critic who asks seriously misguided questions, like if the camera is a phallus, whatever the hell that means. And there's also Mercedes McCambridge as Jake's secretary, who tries her best to shield cameras away from Jake's private conversations. And there are actual film directors in the film, like Paul Mazursky and Henry Jaglom, pretty much playing themselves. Now, the film within the film is truly electrifying stuff. It's also called The Other Side of the Wind. This is just to confuse the rest of you. And it's just absolutely startling stuff. I've never I don't really know how else to describe it except that it's there's a scene in a bathroom with Oya Kodar, and all of these other people are having sex in the bathroom stalls, and they're watching her as she approaches, and it's edited and filmed in such a way that is so absolutely way ahead of its time. I mean, there was nothing else like this in the 1970s. I mean, not even close, that I can certainly recall from what I've seen of that era. It's the film is a powder keg of a cinematic punch to the gut. It's very excitingly and daringly edited, with a great deal of cross-cutting. Some of it obviously by Orson Welles, most of it by Bob Murawski, and it's complemented with a jazzy score by Michel Legrand. So anyone that calls themselves a film buff really should see this film. This film is not just for people that have heard of Orson Welles or have seen Orson Welles' films like Citizen Kane or Touch of Evil or The Stranger or The Lady from Shanghai or any of those pictures. It's not also for just the people who admire some of his later work that has gone certainly underappreciated and definitely vastly underrated, like F for Fake. It's really, it's a film about making films, and it's filled with a lot of sadness and regret, based on the main character played by John Huston, a aloof, drunken regret, and it's a very richly layered performance by John Huston. I mean, it's not like anything you would have seen him ever play. This is only one of 2 lead roles John Huston has ever played. The other one I can't remember what it was called, but it has never actually been released in the United States. So this one, he's mostly been known as a character actor. But any scene with John Huston is remarkable due to his nuanced, detailed, often drunken expressions with the voice of a cigar-chomping god of film. That's really, there's no way you could ever watch John Huston in any film and say he was boring. He isn't. He's a fascinating actor. It's just a rich performance. Same with Peter Bogdanovich as Otter Lake, who does his best to help Jake, and just as Bogdanovich did in real life with Orson Welles. But the pervasive feeling in the film is that the old Hollywood never catered to artists with knowing, admitted self-expression. They wanted directors for hire who knew how to complete a film on time and on budget and could make a killing at the box office. And my feeling is that art existed only to serve commercial prospects in the studio-run Hollywood of the 70s, and that is Otter Lake in a nutshell. And it is with it's also true with Peter Bogdanovich himself, who later suffered the same fate as many of the movie brats of that time. And so, considering that the film starts with a narration by Peter Bogdanovich, looking back on what had happened with this film, you may as well, it's done in the character's voice of Brooks Otterlake, but it's very much Bogdanovich's voice. And I think he starts to see at the end that his life and the films that he has made, he can begin to understand what Orson Welles went through. Peter Bogdanovich has had his up and downs as a director, but maybe more downs and ups, but nonetheless, he has managed to find financing for most of his films. But Orson Welles had to really dig for all sorts of foreign sources of income, or I should say financing, to complete a lot of his films. So for movie buffs, this is essential movie making. It is absolutely watchable, tantalizing to watch. It's unlike anything I've ever seen, in particular anything having to do with Hollywood. As far as a satire of Hollywood, it's absolutely unique, and it just has such a great performance by John Huston. Everyone is just terrific and on target in this picture. I mean, you just have to see it. I've seen a lot of Orson Welles' other incomplete films that finally managed to be released and completed in some form. It's All True, for example, and a couple of others. But this is the film that I think, for those who thought, oh, Orson Welles, well, in his latter years he was just doing Paul Masson commercials and acting for hire, should really watch this film and should concentrate on the fact that he did still try to make films, and that Citizen Kane was maybe something of a curse at the end of the day. Not many people debut with a great film like Citizen Kane, at the age of 25 when they're starting out in Hollywood. But then not many can make a film like Other Side of the Wind. So check it out. And if you like with what you hear here, you can subscribe to Jerry Saravia at the Movies. Please subscribe and hit like and hit that notifications bell. And check out Other Side of the Wind, which is currently streaming on Netflix. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.